So, Martin, where do libraries, archives, and museums intersect?
Good question, David. And we don't really know the full answer yet, but one of the things we're hoping to find out in some of the new linked data interoperability meetings that are coming up in the coming weeks is to explore that. So coming up in San Francisco in June, we have a meeting that's going to focus on libraries, archives, and museums linked open data, LAMLOD. And what we're going to do there is sort of explore a lot of the different projects, content streams that are available, explore the different ways that we can actually sort of tease out different portions of library, archive, and museum collections that'll enable us to sort of pull together museum specimens and objects, the archival data behind those, and then the library collections of books and other materials that support all of those things. So it brings together all three of those collections.
So, just take a step down into a single step down into the technical architecture. Why does linked data help with this?
Well, one of the things we see now, for instance, in a Smithsonian project we have with sewing machines. This library has a big collection of the literature related to the actual sewing machines, the manuals, the parts lists, all of those types of things. The museum has the collection of the actual sewing machines. Right now, there's no good way to bring those two things together, where you can find a Singer sewing machine parts manual and the actual sewing machine. If we can put that data out there in a linkable way so that people who are exploring the world of sewing machines and all the issues that are related to that, they can then sort of pull those materials together themselves and learn about parachute making sewing machines versus a traditional home domestic sewing machine.
So you could always, you could always have done that by building a large data model of sewing machines or of technology more broadly, and getting everybody to agree on it, and then all the museums in the world and all the archives and libraries, all that data would flow together. But that's not what the linked data model is, so to speak. So tell us about that.
Well, the way I see it is that we are sort of moving beyond that age of the giant portal where one monolithic institution or group of institutions will get together and create the product that will be used by a focused consumer group of some sort.
But we love portals, and they always work so well.
And they're very obvious, but what we really need is actually to push all of that development out to the rest of the world. A colleague at the Smithsonian, Mike Edson, likes to use the quote about how the smartest people in the room are not in the room with you at that time. So you really need to sort of push out all of that sort of new creation to the people out there in the rest of the world that aren't necessarily in your own world. So by putting the data out there, there's probably brilliant people interested in sewing machines that aren't in my particular niche of the world. And they're going to make new and interesting things around that content that I can't afford to bring all those people into the same room to build that portal.
But the data that they're putting out, because they're doing it independently of how other people are doing it, there is not a worldwide conspiracy in this case to agree upon what the terms of the data are. How does this data get re-sewn together?
Or stitched back together?
Well, if you insist.
Well, what we're hoping is that people will just be sort of exploring these data. One of the questions I have about linked data is, again, how you actually make people aware of the data out there. So how will the International Association of Sewing Machine Fanciers know that there actually is this data available to them? How do you promote that? And that's where I think we sort of bring in the whole social networking angle. So you can have a Facebook Friends of Sewing Machine page where that sort of information can be promulgated, and it'll be sort of the word of mouth, friend to friend kind of contact, so that people will start linking up the data through a person-to-person context.
So the idea is it's more important, or at least more practical use out of putting data out without first having to get the world to agree upon what the terminology is and so forth, and allowing for an ad hoc gathering of it and figuring out of it than you would by delaying for 20 years till we all agree on all the details. Is that roughly?
I like to sort of, historically, whenever I've been thinking about digital libraries for the last 15 years or so, I always like to go back to what libraries do in the first place. And the primary thing that libraries do is put books on shelves and make them available to people. We don't generally prescribe how people use those books. Our goal is to gather the material, put it in an accessible place, and let people go and do stuff with it. I think for digital libraries, we need to just do that in a modern digital way. Get data, put it on the shelves, and let people write dissertations or write fan fiction around those things. And that's sort of the goal, is to just put stuff out there and see what happens with it. And I think we need to do that in a digital way like we historically have done with the books on shelves.
So if there's a book about a panda, then somebody might use it as a children's book, or they might use it as anthropological research, and it's not up to the library to decide that. And the same way for linked data about the panda book or about the panda itself.
Exactly.
Okay then, thank you very much.
Thanks, David.